everyone. In today's video, we are going to be showing you a Kawaii toaster. So the little toaster has a Kawaii face on it that's, I would say, kind of like mouse style, or maybe a cat. Or mouse, I suppose. But then inside the toaster, there's a piece of toast that pops up that has a Kawaii face on it too. And this is a remake design of a design that you guys never saw because I threw it away. And at one point I mentioned this, that, you know, sometimes designs just don't work out and then I toss them and then I just forget about it. And I said this about a toaster and I had so many people say, well, make the toaster again. So here it is. Here's the toaster once again. This time it worked. The first time I didn't make the space of the top of the toaster big enough or wide enough for the toast to come out, but I corrected that mistake this time. And actually this whole design concept I've done so much that in general it just is a lot easier for me. So I hope you guys like this design. It is so cute with a little toaster. Most of the colors in this are from Double Dip. We have the toast colors and then all the stuff on the background and the toaster. So I'll put the links to all the colors below and my discount code, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!
So we're going to begin with an overlay of a shimmery pink acrylic in the background. This one is semi-sheer, but it just leaves a really nice, pretty coverage over the nail, kind of like a BB cream over your face. Not fully opaque, but just kind of smooths everything out. And then encase the nail with a layer of clear acrylic to make sure that it is nice and strong. If you wanted to, that double dip color, it's called Expensive Pink, is the one that's in the background, and that one would work as a full coverage if you don't want to do the clear encapsulation. But I kind of liked the semi-sheer quality of it. I thought it felt a little bit more like Japanese styling, so I did want to go with that. But now I'm going to sculpt two rectangles with an aqua color for the front and the back of my toaster. So when you're doing this, you could definitely do and draw a little template out for yourself if you want to make sure that they are perfect and you just need kind of a visual aid. That would be something that is, recommended actually. So you just draw out the shape of your toaster on a little scrap paper and then set your nail form backing on top of it. And at least all the nail form backings I've ever used, I can see through easily enough that I can, visually see my template underneath it. So if you want to do that, then that is definitely an option. And depending on the type of toaster you make, because there's really so many varieties these days, they are sometimes very square, sometimes more rounded. And so you can kind of play around with the shape of your toaster a little bit if you would like to. So I have my two pieces for the front and the back of the toaster. And then after I have those sculpted, I'm going to sculpt my piece of bread with a tan color of acrylic. And so I'm going to do that next to them, still on my nail form backing, and just set down the piece of acrylic. And then I'm going to press it into a bread shape. The great thing with sculpting your bread next to where your toaster is that you can see exactly how big to make your piece of bread, because you need to make sure that your bread is going to fit into the toaster. So it can't be too big. So when you're sculpting it, kind of continue to press in the sides so that you make sure it is the right shape and the right size so that it fits. And then after it starts to, really hold its shape, you're going to dip a nail brush into some white or clear acrylic, just the powder. And then you're going to use that brush to add texture to your toast to give it kind of a bread texture. So I'm just going to press my brush into it. And as you can see, it creates all these little polka dots. And it also left a hair in my acrylic. But we're going to then fix up the shape of the sides of our toast just a little bit to make sure that they didn't get messed up with that brush. And then using a shade of brown, I'm going to be sculpting the crust. So I'm going to take just a little bit of that brown color and very thin acrylic this time. You don't want it to be too thick. And you just sort of drag it around the outside edge of the bread. Just kind of pull it and stretch it going around. And we're going to do it just like so, just so it kind of gets that color. You don't have to make a very thick line at all because you're not looking at the bread from the side, you're looking at it from the front. So now we're going to sculpt all of the things that are left on our toaster. So you need a handle for where, if you push the bread down as it's going down for toasting it, you need to sculpt a little handle for that. And that's a darker shade of teal. So I wanted my toaster to be two-toned in color just to give it a little bit more interest and variety on the nail. So the second color I'm using, like I said, is a slightly darker shade, but it also has shimmer to it. So my background on this nail has some shimmer qualities to it, and so does the front and the sides of my toaster. When you're sculpting the sides of your toaster, one of them needs to have an opening on it because it needs to have where the wire is going up and down for the toast going up and down. So when you're sculpting them, sculpt the first one and then sculpt the second one. And before they're dry or cured, and it's just one of them. So just pick one. Take a dotting tool and draw a little opening in the middle of it. And then kind of fix up the sides of it again. And then once you draw that opening, you may end up with a little too much acrylic just because it kind of pulls some of it away. And then you can fix up that opening again with your dotting tool. And basically you're kind of creating a big O shape is what it ends up being. So we're going to sculpt our O. And then you're going to need to make a top and a bottom to the toaster too. So the bottom of the toaster is pretty self-explanatory. It is the width of the sides and the length of the longer sides of your toaster. So sculpt that one. But then the top of your toaster, where your toast has to come in and out of it, instead of sculpting an opening like I did for the one side, I actually sculpted 2 skinny stripes. And that was just because I thought it would be easier than trying to make sure I had an opening in the acrylic that was wide enough for the bread. So here's the first skinny stripe. Sculpting that nice long little bit, and there's going to be the second one. That one was a little bit funky. I had a bit more acrylic to fill it out. I used very thin acrylic to sculpt those 2 shapes so that I could get them to be very long and very narrow to just really ensure that I had enough space for my toast to come in and out of the toaster. And then cut off a little bit at the end there. And then once you have all of these shapes sculpted and you're happy with their shape and they're completely cured and you can peel them off, they're not going to bend or move on you, then you can start gluing the toaster together. So I'm going to glue everything together with the exception of those 2 strips for the top. I'm going to leave those for later because they are going to be a little bit more delicate since they are so very thin. So I'm first going to glue the bottom of my toaster in place, and then I'm going to glue the 2 sides. So there's the next side, and this does not have to be perfect. You don't have to glue these. As you can see, there's some weird gaps around the end of my toaster. And since my toaster had a slight rounded, the top and the bottom and the sides, they all had rounded. They weren't just like a perfect square rectangle. It isn't going to fit completely perfectly together from the beginning because the little sides that we sculpted are going to be flat. Since they were on the nail form backing, they just aren't going to have that curve. And then after you have all those sides on, then you can glue on the other front or back of the toaster. And now we're going to fill in that missing curve and reinforce all of the sides with more of the teal acrylic. So when you're doing this, don't try to get away with just using a little bit of acrylic. As you can see, that bead I just set down is actually quite large. And that is going to give you that full coverage and really get it to be nice and curved and give us kind of almost a retro style toaster. And really just press that all the way around and then curve it around the sides. Add another fairly sizable bead to each side and really fill it in. And if you end up with more acrylic than you need, that's fine because this toaster is really going to require a bit of filing anyway. And so if it ends up getting a bit thicker than what is necessary, it's not the end of the world. Flip that around, fill in the other side, and when you're filling in the side that has the space for the slider, you are going to have to be a little bit more cautious than on the other sides and continually clear out that opening so that you don't, your wire won't get stuck. You need to make sure that that's fully open. But if it does get to where you fill it in a little bit, an e-file zap would clear that out pretty easy. So now I'm going to take a hand file and I'm going to file my box smooth and just kind of go through and go over the whole thing and fix up any spots that are going to need a little bit of assistance. So I'm going to file the top edges of the sides of the box as well as just around the whole perimeter and make sure that it's nice and smooth. And the great thing with those colors that I'm using is the shimmer isn't like a glitter, so that it would be affected by filing it. Just the texture of it, they file really nicely. So when you're working with colors that are super glittery, like if you're working with more like a foiled glitter, you might end up with, you could possibly ruin your glitter by filing it. But these ones are okay and you don't have to worry about it. Then I'm going to put in those 2 skinny pieces for the top of the toaster. So there's the first one. I'm going to put down a little bit more nail glue and then we're going to glue in the second one in place. And if yours might happen to be a little bit too long, and if that's the case for yours too, then since they're so thin, a manicure scissors will trim the acrylic. So you can place that second one down and then fill in the top. So you're going to want to reinforce these just as you did the rest of the toaster with some more of that teal color acrylic, as well as filling in the gaps on the sides that are slightly open. Just fill those in, spread that out, do that same thing for the other side, pat it out, spread it out, what have you. Just kind of go through like so, and then we're going to glue a piece of wire to the back of our bread and do it right along the bottom of the bread. You want to make sure it's right at the base, and the wire will be pointing toward the same side as the opening in your toaster. So whatever side you want your toaster to have the little handle on, that's the side that the wire needs to be directed. And then add a little bit of clear acrylic to the back to really just hold the wire in place and make sure that it isn't going to fall off or break. And then after you have that done, then you can string the wire through the toaster and then cut off any extra wire that there may be And then you're going to go back and you have that little handle that you made right in the beginning, and you're going to grab that and you're going to glue it to the end of the wire. So set that down, hold it in place till it grabs, and then take more of your teal acrylic yet again. And we're going to be filling out that handle so that it's nice and rounded and isn't flat on one side. And then glue the toaster to the nail wherever you would like it placed. And then after you have that down and it's not going to fall off on you, then you can take some clear acrylic and fill in behind it to secure it to the nail. So the majority of this whole design is like it's gluing, reinforcing, back and forth, the whole thing. But then we're going to paint a face on our toaster. And this is the part where you can really take this design in different directions. You can, you could do a brand name across the front of your toaster if you wanted to. I'm trying to think of what toaster brands are prevalent, or you can do something that's kind of kawaii like mine. I did my 2 little eyes and then my critter face and then a little teal heart in the corner, a couple pink polka dots on the cheeks. I'm going to fix up the roundness of my eyes a little bit more. And then a few white highlight dots. And then you can do the same kind of a little face on your bread. But like I said, you could take this in a different direction. You could paint the Wonder Bread logo up above it and have some fun by doing just some different logo prints. Or you can there's some actually really funny toaster puns out there. If you Google them, I didn't necessarily feel that they were all appropriate for my channel, but I still got a chuckle out of it. And depending on your style, that could be something that you could play around with too. So there's just, different directions you could take with your toaster design. Then we're going to apply a layer of gel sealer over the background to make sure that shimmery pink is nice and shiny. And then a layer of what's called 3D glaze, but it's basically a regular lacquer top coat over the top of the toaster, which is going to give it a satiny sheen. So it's not as shiny as the background, but still has kind of a bit of that shine. And then matte top coat over the toast. And that is it. I love this little nail so much. I'm so happy that it turned out. Like I said in the intro, the first toaster I made years ago didn't work out and I just put the whole idea aside, but I came back to it and I'm glad. And here is a Melody Minutes. Can you do it with your feet too? You did it, Melody!
You're still angel.
Good job! You fell over.
You see your snow angel though? Isn't that pretty?
Good job! It was so cold that day, and Melody insisted on going outside and playing in the snow. So I'm very grateful that she has a daddy who's willing to do that, because I wouldn't have been out there. I hope you guys love this design, and I will see you next time. Bye!